Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Utah Story Show. It's been a little bit since I recorded a podcast. I'm glad to be back with you. I was sick. I went to a conference. I came back. I'm feeling much better now, so I'm happy to get back into it. There's a lot we're getting into this month. This is the month of October 2021, and we've got a series of episodes we're doing on the Great Salt Lake. And it's not been talked about much in the media till kind of recently because the lake is drying up. It's at the lowest level it's been in something like 50 years. We're going to be talking about the mega drought and the impact that's having on the entire Great Basin area, including Lake Powell and the Weber County area, Salt Lake County, Davis County, what that's going to mean as we move into our fall winter season, and really what impact it's having on the lake, and what are the bad ideas that are coming down the pipeline concerning mitigating these negative factors we're seeing with the mega drought. But today's episode, we're focusing on the Great Salt Lake and the inland port. A lot of times I think people hear the word inland port and they're like, I don't want to hear about this. This is so boring. I don't care if there's a port. I don't care if there isn't a port. Just leave me alone with this port. I'm going to tell you why this is important today. It has to do with demographics, really. So I pulled up a Google Earth page of the Salt Lake Valley, and I just wanted to go over real quick the geography of our valley. So here you see how enormous the Great Salt Lake is when you look that it extends from far beyond North Ogden all the way down to West Valley City. And the amount of space that the Great Salt Lake takes up is almost the same amount of space that the majority of the entire population live in Utah. So there's like 2 million people along the Wasatch Front. If you look at the amount of space we take up with those 2 million people, it's about the same space as the Great Salt Lake. If I zoom out and we just look at this lake from, let's say, 30,000 feet, then you see that it is enormous in the terms of the geographic area. There's nothing compares even close except the Great Lakes up here in Michigan and Canada. And the reason why it's so significant is that when these birds are migrating either north to south or from east to west or from south to north, they need a place to stop. They need to stop and they need to find food. They need to find water. And we have a population collapse happening right now with migratory birds. If you didn't hear, there's 4 billion fewer migratory birds right now, and they're wondering what's going on. And there's also an insect population collapse going on. If you notice, when you used to go driving around the Great Salt Lake, you drive even on I-80 or I-15, you'd get all these insects on your windshield. That's not happening anymore because there's just far fewer insects. And I think the obvious culprit of what's going on is if you look at your property tax notice, if you live in Utah, you'll notice that there's a certain amount dedicated to mosquito abatement. That mosquito abatement bill that we all pay in our property taxes, that goes into a pool where they just flood the area with mosquito poison. And if you live close to the Great Salt Lake, you love it because you're not getting swarmed with mosquitoes. And who likes mosquitoes? Well, it turns out the birds do. So the problem is you kill all the mosquitoes, you kill the mosquito larvae. That's what the birds are eating, and that's what the population of birds rely on. So, but back to the subject of the inland port. What does this have to do with the lake? What does it have to do with the greater picture of our geography, the ecosystem of the lake? Well, I'm going to tell you. So before I get into that, though, I want to recommend you go out to utahstories.com and subscribe to our digital newsletter. Check out also subscribing to the print magazine. The print magazine is an awesome deal. It's $24 for the entire year, and we will send you one copy every month, $2 a month. And it's like an amazing bargain for getting the other side of Utah politics, environment issues, food and chefs. We write about farms. Our amazing team of writers, you'll support their work by subscribing to the magazine or subscribe to our free digital newsletter down here. And we'll send you just one email a week. And with that, you can become a member of our community and be a more active participant in what's going on here. So, all right, let's get into how the inland port is going to work, why it was proposed, why people, at least that I'm listening to, by and large, don't like it. If you're new to Utah Stories, we've been talking to people about the inland port now for about 2 years. We had on the program Dee DeSeed. She's managing. She's a former city council member, and she's managing an anti-inland port coalition. We talked to Jack. What's his last name? Executive Director Jack Welsh. Is that his name? I might have it wrong, but anyway, he's the yes man for the port. They brought him in because he's got other ports passed because it was getting so much negative press. They're like, oh, shoot, what are we going to do? And they hired this guy who was able to get another inland port passed, I believe, in Kansas City or something like that. And then we brought in Governor Hughes. He was, or not Governor Hughes, council member, state legislature member, former Speaker of the House member, Greg Hughes, to speak about it, and then former Mayor Rocky Anderson, and then Dr. Minch, who leads the Physicians for Clean Air. And why this is such an important topic is because going back to the geographic area of Salt Lake Valley, you can see here, looking just at the valley, for those of you joining me on YouTube, the valley is divided really clearly by I-15. It just cuts the whole valley in half. And on the east side of I-15, you have the east areas like East Mill Creek, Murray, Salt Lake City, and then you go up into the benches and you go up into the areas with expensive property values like the Avenues, the Olympus Cove over here. But on the west side of the valley, you have West Jordan, Taylorsville, West Valley City. And if you know what the way the demographics are split up, by and large, our demographics are split that the wealthier people, the more elite, the people with higher incomes, they live on the east side, and the people with lower incomes, the working class, way more ethnic minorities live on the west side. West Valley, if you want to see an incredible melting pot of cultures, you'll find a Somalian restaurant next to a pho restaurant, next to a Vietnamese restaurant, next to a Bosnian restaurant. It's just like tons of ethnic minorities go there because that's where real estate's way more affordable. So the problem we're finding here is the inland port proposal is to have it be built right here on the west side, the northwest quadrant, where there used to be a landfill, and there's still swamplands, and it's sort of used to be a drainage basin of the Great Salt Lake, but it's this sort of area right here along I-15 where there's 16,000 acres they want to develop. I'm sorry, I think it's actually on 201 right here. And this whole big northwest quadrant, it's underdeveloped, but it's been underdeveloped for a very good reason. There's a swamp there, and they're having an incredibly difficult time building our new prison there. The building they did not account for the piles they'd have to put in the ground to keep the building from sinking. And it's now double the budget cost of what they initially proposed it would be. I think we're up to $1 billion building this new prison, and it's going to have far fewer beds than our current prison has. And what we have going on here in Utah is, and I've been saying this for a long time, it's a good old boys club who manage things here. These good old boys, they sit in their offices in the state legislature. Most of them are LDS. And they're like, well, we need more economic development. What can we do? Well, Utah's the crossroads of the West, so let's just put in a new inland port full of shipping and receiving centers, and we can give a lot of people great jobs. And that was the proposal probably 10 years ago, why we should have it. And at the same time, in Utah County, they were pushing like crazy Silicon Slopes and economic development related to technology. And they attracted the likes of Adobe and eBay. They built out big data centers for Amazon and the NSA, if you know about that. And technology has become extremely prolific in Utah, and we've been building and growing this economy like crazy. So the main problem we're finding now with the inland port is we don't want these jobs. You cannot sell this to the people based on economics. So what we're seeing is that these white elitists, plutocrats in the state legislature, they're seeing people don't want this inland port. They're running into a lot of blowback. And so what do? They had a coalition of people who were on the advisory council of the inland port, and they were saying the people who were living on the west side were rejecting the environmental consequences of the port because it will adversely affect the people on the west side, and the people on the east side won't be affected at all because they're higher up in the benches. They don't live in the bowl of the valley. So these people were like, no, this inland port, it's going to make more congestion. It's going to make more traffic. It's going to make our air more polluted. It's going to make it more difficult for us to breathe. We don't want it. So what do? They just fired the people off the board, took them off the board, according to the Salt Lake Tribune, and they're still struggling to conduct business in a way that translates as legitimate and transparent. They don't want to be legitimate and transparent. Instead, they want to cram this down and get it done and not let anybody really pay attention to it or pay attention to the environmental concerns, which is requiring way more mosquito abatement, way more pesticide, way more cost overruns than they anticipated. And all around, it's just a terrible idea. We don't want it. We don't need more cars on the road. We don't need more congestion. As I pointed out, we live in a giant bowl. The air gets trapped in the bottom of our bowl, and those who are hurt the most by it are the low-income people who live on the west side. So it's economic bigotry in my assessment, and this needs to stop. And so what can you do to help and be a part of this? This is the best site I found. This is Stop the Polluting Port. I mentioned Dita Seed earlier. She's the one running this. There's now coalition partners signing on to be a part of it. You can see there's a lot of partners now who want to be a part to try to prevent this from happening. There's a little bit of good news. They tried to get a $30 million bond funded last week, and they decided, Jack Welch decided, I hope I got his name right, that they will not even vote on it because it's become so unpopular. And you can sign the petition on this site. It's stopthepollutingport.org. And I highly recommend you go check that out and be a part of this movement, because it's about time that this very stupid idea was ended, and our tax-paying dollars, which I think is about $140 million has so far been spent, that we stop funding this thing. If these guys want to do it and they've got the land, they own it, they can do what they want with their land, but they don't need the public's money. They shouldn't be using our taxpayer money to fund it when we don't want it. It's essentially taxation without representation, especially when those who are affected most by it aren't voting for it. They don't want it. So that's what you should know about the inland port. That pretty much concludes what I wanted to talk about in this episode. Our new issue of Utah Stories is coming out tomorrow. I'd highly encourage you to pick it up. It's a really awesome issue. It's full of Halloween stories, haunted places, and what we also did, we went out and talked to the homeless people in Sugar House to find out what they think about homeless policy. We're going to do an upcoming episode this month about that, and you're going to hear their voices. It's a treatment I've been doing for about 12 years at Utah Stories. Why not get the input of the homeless on homeless policy and issues? And it's interesting. They always have insightful, interesting things to say. And so I look forward to sharing that with you in the future. All right. So I want to tell you about our sponsors of this program. I'm super proud to announce our latest sponsor of the Utah Stories podcast, Wasatch Brewery. Wasatch was founded over 3 decades ago by Greg Scherf, and they are about to celebrate their 35th year anniversary. Leading up to celebrations, they're releasing new beers, new branding, and Utah Stories is collaborating with Wasatch on releasing a series of interviews I did with Greg Scherf way back in 2008 and 2009. Greg is seriously one of the funniest, awesome, most interesting business owners I've ever met, and it's going to be very fun to pull up these interviews, share them with you. Him talking about his irreverent antics, how he got the microbrewery bill passed through the state legislature, and how he's really one of the instrumental players in getting Utah Stories magazine launched off the ground. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this and possibly doing, we're still crossing our fingers, possibly doing a greater documentary on craft beer in Utah. And if you don't know the bigger story about craft beer, it's slowly been chiseling away the market share from the big industrial brewers to the point where there's about 25% market share of the local craft breweries. That's more money circulating in our local economies. That's more money for jobs that people really want, brewing beer, selling beer, working in craft breweries. And so that's what Wasatch is all about. So go visit Wasatch on their website at wasatchbeers.com and see their entire lineup of delicious beers, and check out their new labels that are of their new beers they're actually releasing in the month of October to celebrate their anniversary. Really great labels. And their Wasatch brew pubs are located in the Salt Lake City International Airport in the heart of Sugar House, as well as the top of Park City's Main Street. They serve fresh and awesome food along with their excellent beers. Again, go enjoy Wasatch Brewery to learn everything that's going on. Visit them at wasatchbeers.com. The show is also brought to you by Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef. And if you have not tried grass-fed beef, I've said this many times, you absolutely need to taste the difference. So you hear people talk about how you got to go out and hunt an elk to see what elk tastes like. I tasted elk and I've tasted grass-fed beef, and I gotta say they're very similar in the consistency, the texture, and the amount of flavor you're getting. I think we've gotten used to putting tons of hamburger on our hamburger, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, all these condiments, salt, pepper, so you don't even really taste the beef. If you really want to taste what beef is supposed to taste like, go out and try Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef. They've got a special offer going on for Utah Stories listeners. If you go to cmrbeef.com/Utah Stories, you can save up to $50 on your first purchase. Go try their awesome steaks, their ribeyes. I love to smoke their briskets. I do this about this time every year. There's the site. And you can get 10% off your total order, and you can pick it up at the farmer's market. They're awesome to work with. We just got our whole cow. We've been cooking it almost every night. I absolutely love it, and I really do feel a lot better eating it, not only because the animals are raised outdoors their entire life, but there are no hormones, antibiotics, no pesticides used in their fields. It's all natural, ecological building in their sustainable practices. I've been out to their ranch. It's absolutely amazing. So go check them out right now, cmrbeef.com/Utah Stories. All right, thank you so much for watching the Utah Stories Show. My name's Rich Markosian. I'll see you next time.